United States and the Soviet Union stand on the verge of direct military confrontation.
The Soviet Union and the United States were deeply antagonistic. It's hard to recapture the fear and suspicion of the Cold War.
Was there a concern in Europe at the time that these new missiles would bring the potential of turning Europe itself into the battlefield?
There was a lot of public opposition to the American deployment of missiles in Western Europe, and in particular West Germany. There were lots of demonstrations, there were anti-nuclear protests, and I was in Britain at the time, and you could easily go down to London on the weekend with 500,000 people, which is almost unprecedented now.
Geneva has played a significant role over an extended period of time in international negotiations. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Geneva has a couple of major advantages. The first is the historical one of being the seat of the League of Nations and the second headquarters of the United Nations. And the second one is being in neutral Switzerland.
The American and Russian negotiators have developed a slick routine for shaking hands when they meet, but the intermediate-range missile talks themselves have made little progress in nearly 2 years.
It was definitely a period of political ferment, and I think both were trying to position themselves to maintain a stable military situation while at the same time not looking like the party that was blocking progress towards arms control.
Do you think that's the norm for arms control negotiations?
The entire history of arms control looks like one package. There's almost no case where negotiations proceed quickly and smoothly to an outcome that we can all foresee.
Paul Nitze had a long career. Can you tell us what type of diplomat he was?
Paul Nitze was the Cold Warrior's Cold Warrior. He had a very long and distinguished career. Started in the State Department in the late 1940s and was in the policy planning staff in 1950. He'd been involved in arms control negotiations throughout the 1970s as well. On 16th July 1982, just outside of Geneva, Saint-Cergue, Paul Nitze and Yuliy Kvitsinski, the chief negotiators of the American and Soviet sides in arms control, went and took what became called the Walk in the Woods, which was a singular moment in the history of arms control negotiations and in the history of Cold War diplomacy between the United States and the Soviet Union. One of the reasons they came up here, though, was because they had originally met in, I think it was Paul Nitze's apartment, and the Russian negotiator said, "How do I know that this place isn't bugged?" And Nitze said, "I can't actually guarantee that."
It had long been my view that when a negotiation becomes stalled, it is necessary to get at it in some different way. And so we went off into the woods.
Can you tell us a bit about the conversation?
Well, it was meant to be as informal as possible, but it did have a concrete proposal. The Soviet Union would withdraw some of the missiles that they had already deployed, and the Americans would withdraw some of the missiles that they were planning to deploy, essentially stop the race.
What happened after the Walk in the Woods?
Well, on the Soviet side, radio silence. On the American side, of course, Paul Nitze had gone beyond the negotiating position that had been established, so it died on the table, if you will.
The Walk in the Woods was meant to be a private conversation, but the proposal ultimately became public knowledge. What was the reaction when that happened?
I think the reaction was in part, and the leak may have been partly designed to show that the United States was willing to move beyond its position. And I think that that's a hallmark of what Nitze actually did in this case. He was committed to the outcome.
This walk wasn't deemed successful at the time, but what lessons can we draw?
The lesson from the Walk in the Woods is that success is not immediate, and that in fact many of these processes, especially arms control or any kind of negotiations, have to be seen in the long term. Keep a set of clear objectives, and if you don't have a vision of what the possible end results might be, or that there are solutions, then it's hard to get people to be mobilized. You need both the fear and the positive message that if we work together on this, there might be some solution that addresses all of our concerns. General Secretary Gorbachev, 2 years later, there was a chance for the same kind of creative thinking to be done at the highest levels that unlocked some of the deepest conflicts in the Cold War.
Arms control is a journey. It takes years of negotiation, unexpected twists and turns, and lots of creativity.
I think that's such an important point for us to remember today. Here, as we're in Geneva, Switzerland, as we're talking about a digital Geneva Convention, as we're thinking about a new generation of arms and the need for a new generation of arms control negotiations, but we also need to take some of the lessons from the Walk in the Woods and apply them as well.